Why can't people just stop behaviors they don't want to do?
I get asked that question quite often. As a hypnotherapist, I get a lot of people who want to change behaviors. The most simple ones are things like nail biting, pulling their hair. More complex behaviors would be things like bulimia, people cutting themselves. And then the one most people come for, or which I get most often, is food problems. And then there's also all the other addictions: alcohol, smoking, gambling. But the one I most often get is food addictions, although we won't call it that. It's people having all sort of problems with eating and food. The reason we use hypnotherapy to change these things is because it's in the domain of the unconscious mind, and we have to go in there where the origins of these behaviors are. Now, sometimes it's quite simple. It can be like 1 or maybe 2 sessions. Other times it's a bit more complex, a bit more technical, because there's a lot more things going on down there. And these behaviors are often set up very early in life as coping mechanisms or strategies to cope with difficult situations, especially when we're young children, I'd say from 10 forward to birth and even before birth. If the child's needs, its most basic needs, are not met, then the subconscious mind uses strategies and mechanisms to cope with that and make sure that that child, that baby, that young toddler survives in some way. So these behaviors often come from a very, very early age. And once they're set up there in the deeper layers of the subconscious mind, they just run on a life of their own. And they keep running. So many years later, when things are actually quite fine, contexts have changed, these inner behaviors, which is driven by parts inside the subconscious mind, they still run. And often they cut off, or in psychology we often say the mind has split off. A certain part of the mind is split off and runs its own program down there. So all I do in hypnosis and hypnotherapy is talking and updating these inner parts, which doesn't know the outside world has changed and things have changed. But they still run the show. Now, as I said, sometimes it's just a one session conversation, but a lot of other times there might be still a lot of old trauma stored deep inside. And these parts use the old maps and the old files as evidence for driving this behavior. So I prefer often first to do the cleaning out or deleting or updating these old files, and then reconnect to this part or parts, updating them. In a way, all I do, and I think most other therapists in my field, is bringing connections to different part of the mind or different part of the subconscious mind and building that connections. Now, in the newer therapies where they use all sort of new kind of hallucinogenic drugs, it's the same process. It's where different parts of the mind reconnect. Doesn't matter which one we talk about. And I think the therapy in hypnosis is where we connect different parts of the mind, which was cut off or running its own show there in the background. And that's why hypnosis or any other unconscious therapy or body therapy is so successful. Because if you just talk about that, you never actually talk to these deeper subconscious parts. Otherwise, you just talk to the logical mind or the left brain. You have to go in there where these parts live. And that's why hypnosis is important, or any other therapy which works in the deeper levels of the mind. Meeting the needs of these inner parts, updating them, and in a way then reconnect with them and bringing them home. So yeah, that's what I basically do. And maybe in the next video I can focus on something specific, like overeating and have a short explanation what often drives that at a deeper level.